What if you could walk into any room and know exactly what everyone was thinking without them saying a word? What if you could instantly tell who's interested in you, who's hiding something, and who secretly wants to leave? We spend our lives surrounded by people, yet most of us struggle to truly understand them. Have you ever felt like someone was hiding their true feelings and you just couldn't figure them out? Or wished you could quickly connect with someone and even win them over without second-guessing yourself? If so, you're in the right place. In this program, I'll teach you 8 powerful psychological hacks to understand people instantly and win them over. These lessons come straight from my book, The People Decoder, and they'll completely change the way you see the people around you. Let's begin. Introduction. Every day, we interact with dozens of people at work, at home, with friends, even strangers. And yet, most of us never stop to think about what those people are really thinking, feeling, or hiding. We take their words at face value, we guess at their intentions, and we often get it wrong. But it doesn't have to be that way. Understanding people isn't magic, it's a skill. And like any skill, it can be learned, practiced, and mastered. When you know what to look for, the subtle signals, the unconscious patterns, the little tells that most people miss, you can decode anyone. And when you can decode people, you can connect with them more deeply, influence them more effectively, and even protect yourself from being misled. In this program, I'm going to teach you 8 of the most powerful psychological hacks to understand people instantly and win them over. These are practical, proven techniques you can start using today. So if you're ready to see people as they really are, and not just as they appear to be, let's begin. Lesson 1. Watch their feet, not their face. Let me ask you something. When you're trying to figure out what someone's thinking, where do you look? Most people say, well, of course, I look at their face. I watch their smile. I look into their eyes. That makes sense, right? We've all been taught to believe that a smile means someone is happy, that eye contact means they're paying attention, that if they nod and say the right things, they're on your side. But here's the problem with that. People lie with their faces all the time. They force a smile even when they're frustrated. They keep eye contact even when they're not really listening. They nod and say, yeah, just to be polite, even though they can't wait to leave. The truth is, the face is the easiest part of the body to fake. But there's one part of the body that almost never lies, and that's the feet. If you want to understand how someone really feels, if you want to know where their attention is, where they want to be, and what they're planning to do next, don't watch their face, watch their feet. Here's why. Your feet are connected to your most primal instincts. Long before we had language, before we could even fake a smile, our bodies had to decide one thing. Am I staying here or am I getting out? And the feet are what carry out that decision. So even today, when someone is feeling uncomfortable, distracted, or ready to leave, their feet will often betray them, even if their words and face seem polite. Let me give you an example. You're at a party, talking to someone. They're smiling, nodding, saying, "Oh, that's really interesting." But then you glance down and you see their feet, and they're pointed toward the door. What does that tell you? It tells you that part of them already wants to leave. Or here's another example. You're in a group conversation, maybe 3 or 4 people standing in a circle. Everyone's chatting and laughing, but then you notice one person's feet are turned slightly away from the group. That's the person who's mentally checked out of the conversation. They're just waiting for a polite moment to excuse themselves. Or let's say you're on a date. The other person seems to be having a good time, but their feet keep shifting, turning away, even when they're facing you with their shoulders. That's a sign of discomfort. On the other hand, if their feet stay pointed directly at you, that's a great sign. It means they're interested and fully present. This little trick works in all kinds of situations at work, in social settings, even at home with your family. It's incredibly useful because feet are much harder to control consciously. Most people have no idea that their feet are giving them away. They're so focused on faking a smile or saying the right thing that they forget about what's happening below the waist. So here's what you can do starting today. The next time you're talking to someone, just take a quick glance at their feet. Are they facing you directly? That's good. Are they angled away or pointing toward the exit? That's not so good. If you see someone's feet start to shift, that's your cue to change something. Maybe wrap up what you're saying. Maybe ask a question to re-engage them. Or maybe just let them go and save yourself the wasted time. It's such a simple thing, but once you train yourself to notice it, you'll be amazed at how much it reveals. Remember, people can fake their face, they can fake their voice, they can fake their words. But their feet almost always tell the truth. So from now on, when you want to know what someone is really thinking, look down. Their feet will tell you what their mouth won't. Lesson 2. Mirror their energy. Now that you understand how to spot what someone really feels by watching their feet, let's move to a skill that doesn't just let you read people, it actually helps you connect with them on a deeper level. Because it's not enough to simply notice what someone feels if you can't make them feel comfortable with you in return. This is where the second psychological hack comes in learning to mirror their energy. Think back to a time when you met someone and instantly felt like you'd known them for years. Conversation flowed easily, you felt relaxed, and everything just seemed to click. Chances are the reason you felt so at ease is because their energy matched yours. On the other hand, you've probably also met people who rubbed you the wrong way right from the start. Maybe they came on too strong, or they seemed distant and cold when you were feeling warm and open. These are moments when the energy between two people is out of sync, and it creates a kind of invisible friction. The good news is, this sense of connection isn't just luck. It's not something that only happens naturally. You can create it deliberately by adjusting yourself to meet others where they are. That is what mirroring is all about. Rather than forcing people to come into your emotional space, you step into theirs first. Here's how it works. Let's say you walk into a meeting with someone who is calm, deliberate, and speaks in a measured tone. If you come in talking fast, gesturing wildly, and laughing loudly, you'll almost certainly throw them off and make them uncomfortable. But if you observe their calm presence and adjust yourself to match it, slowing your speech, softening your tone, sitting back just as they are, you'll find that they start to relax with you, because you're creating a sense of sameness. Similarly, imagine you're at a social event and meet someone who is full of enthusiasm, laughing, and animated. If you respond with a stiff, serious demeanor, you'll come across as cold or disinterested. But if you allow yourself to match their energy, leaning into their enthusiasm and smiling more, they'll immediately feel at ease with you. This works because, as human beings, we're wired to trust and feel safe with those who seem similar to us. It's a survival instinct rooted in our need for belonging. We're constantly, often unconsciously scanning for signs that the person in front of us is one of us. And when we see that, we let our guard down. By mirroring someone's energy, you send the signal that you're like them, and they respond by becoming more open and cooperative. Mirroring isn't just about matching words or even body language, though those are part of it. It's about attuning yourself to their entire emotional state and pacing yourself to meet it. Pay attention to their speaking speed. Are they rapid fire or slow and thoughtful? Notice their volume. Are they loud and confident or quiet and reserved? Observe their posture and gestures. Do they lean forward with excitement or lean back in a more relaxed or cautious way? Once you've read their baseline, begin to adjust yourself to match it. This doesn't mean you have to become a carbon copy of them, or that you have to abandon your own personality. The key is subtlety, just enough similarity to make them feel that you understand them and that they can trust you. People are very good at picking up on insincerity, so your goal is simply to meet them halfway in a way that feels natural. One of the most powerful aspects of mirroring is that once you've established this connection, you can then begin to lead the interaction in the direction you want. For example, if someone is nervous and you initially match their nervous energy, you can then slowly begin to calm your own tone and pace, and they will often follow your lead into a calmer state. This is how skilled negotiators, therapists, and even good friends help others regulate their emotions without saying a word about it. They meet the other person where they are, then gently guide them somewhere better. I've used this myself in countless situations in difficult conversations where someone started out defensive. I first mirrored their tension, leaning forward and keeping my words sharp, but then gradually softened my voice and posture. Almost every time, I watched them slowly let down their guard and match my calmness. You can do the same. So next time you're in a conversation, instead of focusing only on what you want to say, take a moment to observe the other person's state. Notice how they're showing up, and then adjust your presence to match theirs. Do this skillfully, and you'll see people relax. You'll notice them open up more, trust you more, and even start to follow your lead without you having to ask. The truth is, people don't remember much about what you say to them, but they never forget how you made them feel. Mirroring helps you make people feel understood, and when people feel understood, they naturally trust and like you more. So if you want to understand people instantly and win them over, start by stepping into their world, match their energy, meet them where they are. That's how real connection begins. Lesson 3. Ask open-ended questions. By now, you've learned two of the most important skills for understanding people: reading the subtle signals they don't even know they're giving off, and matching their emotional state so they feel safe enough to show you who they really are. But the next step takes you even deeper, because it invites people to reveal themselves in their own words, often in ways they didn't even realize they were doing. This skill is deceptively simple, but it's one of the most powerful tools you can ever use. It's the ability to ask open-ended questions. Most of us go through life asking questions in a way that actually shuts down real connection. Without even realizing it, we phrase our questions so that people can answer with just one word: yes, no, fine, okay. We ask things like, "Did you have a good day?" or "Are you okay?" or "Do you agree?" Those kinds of questions don't invite much. They allow people to retreat behind short, safe answers that reveal nothing about what's really going on inside. But when you ask someone a question they can't answer with just one word, when you leave space for them to reflect, to elaborate, to think out loud, you create an opening. You show them that you're genuinely interested in their perspective. And more often than not, they'll step through that opening and tell you more than they intended. I want you to picture a conversation you've had recently where you felt like you couldn't really get through to the other person. Maybe you asked them, "Is something wrong?" And they said, "No, I'm fine." That's a dead end. But what if instead you'd asked, "What's been on your mind today?" Or, "What's been the most challenging part of your day so far?" Those are open-ended questions, and they don't just open the door for more honesty. They show that you care enough to listen to the real answer. This is especially powerful in situations where people feel guarded or reluctant to share. Let me give you an example from my own life. A colleague of mine once came into work looking distracted and tense. I could have said, "Are you okay?" which would have given them an easy out. "Yeah, I'm fine." But instead, I said, "What's been weighing on you this morning?" And after a moment of hesitation, they told me something personal, that they'd been holding back something they said they hadn't told anyone else yet. That moment deepened our working relationship in a way that never would have happened if I'd left them with a yes or no question. Open-ended questions also help you discover what matters most to someone. If you're trying to understand a new client, you could ask, "Do you like this design?" And they'll probably say yes or no, but that doesn't tell you much. Instead, ask, "What about this design feels right to you?" Or, "What would make this feel even better?" Those kinds of questions invite people to share their priorities, their tastes, even their hidden concerns. It's worth noting that this skill works equally well in personal relationships. We often make the mistake of assuming we know what people want from us, but when you ask the right kind of question, you'll find out what really matters to them. In a romantic relationship, for instance, instead of asking, "Did you have a good weekend?" try asking, "What was the highlight of your weekend?" Or even, "What would have made your weekend perfect?" Those kinds of questions uncover details and emotions you'd never hear otherwise. When you start asking open-ended questions regularly, you'll notice something else as well. People begin to see you differently. They start to feel like you truly care about what they think. They start to trust you more because you're giving them room to express themselves instead of cutting them off with shallow yes or no exchanges. People are naturally drawn to those who make them feel heard. There's even a deeper benefit to this practice. The more you let people talk, the more they reveal, often without realizing how much they're telling you. You can pick up on their values, their insecurities, their hidden agendas, just by listening carefully to how they answer and what they choose to emphasize. Someone who keeps saying, "I just want everyone to trust me," might be hinting that they don't feel trusted or that they know they've done something to undermine that trust. Someone who answers a question about their weekend by immediately complaining about work is telling you where their mind really is. So here's how you can put this into practice right away. First, notice how often you're asking closed questions. When you catch yourself saying things like, "Do you like this?" or "Is everything okay?" stop and reframe it. Ask instead, "What do you like about this?" or "What's going on for you today?" Second, when someone gives you a vague answer, don't be afraid to follow up with another open question. If they say, "Oh, it's fine," you can gently say, "What would make it better?" Or, "Tell me more about what fine means to you today." And third, get comfortable with silence. When you ask an open-ended question, people may pause and think, and that's good. Don't rush to fill the silence. Let them find their words. Those moments of reflection are often when people reveal the most. Over time, you'll find that people begin to open up to you more than they do to others. They'll feel like you understand them better than anyone else, not because you have some magical insight, but because you cared enough to ask the right questions and listen to the answers. Understanding people isn't about reading minds, it's about giving them permission to tell you who they are. Open-ended questions are the key to unlocking that. So the next time you want to truly understand someone, resist the urge to ask, "Are you okay?" Instead, try, "What's on your mind today?" or "What's been the best part of your day so far?" And just listen. You'll be surprised at how much people are willing to share if you only know how to ask. Lesson 4. Decode microexpressions. By now, you've learned how to read someone's body language, how to connect with their energy, and how to invite them to reveal themselves with open-ended questions. These are powerful skills, and if you practiced only these 3, you'd already understand people far better than most. But in this next lesson, we're going to go even deeper into a level of human behavior that most people never notice, and yet it happens right in front of them every single day. This is where you begin to see what others are really thinking, even when they're trying to hide it. This is the ability to decode micro-expressions, those fleeting, involuntary flashes of emotion that cross a person's face in a fraction of a second. You've probably had a feeling of this before, even if you didn't know what it was. Maybe you were talking to someone who smiled politely at you, but for just the briefest instant you thought you saw something else. maybe annoyance, maybe disgust, and then it was gone. You probably told yourself you imagined it, but chances are you didn't. Microexpressions are real. They're tiny, almost imperceptible signals of what someone is truly feeling, and they happen because emotions are hardwired into our nervous system. Before someone has a chance to consciously hide what they feel, before they can plaster on the fake smile or say the right words, their real feelings slip out. Most microexpressions last only a fraction of a second. In fact, researchers have measured some as quick as 1/20th of a second. They're so fast that you can't always catch them unless you know what to look for. But once you do, you'll never see people the same way again. Let me give you an example. I once sat in a meeting where a client was reviewing a proposal I'd put together. She smiled warmly and said, "Oh, this looks great, really." But in the instant she glanced down at the document, I caught the briefest flicker of disgust, her lip curling slightly, one eyebrow twitching. That told me she didn't really like what she saw. She quickly covered it up and kept smiling, but because I'd noticed the truth, I was able to adjust on the spot, asking specific questions and uncovering her real concerns. Without that moment, I might have walked out thinking everything was fine, only to hear later that we'd lost the deal. This is the power of decoding microexpressions. They show you what people are really feeling before they have a chance to hide it. And they give you a tremendous advantage in understanding, persuading, and even protecting yourself. So how can you start to recognize them? The first step is to know the most common microexpressions and what they mean. Researchers like Paul Ekman have identified 7 universal emotions that show up on every human face, regardless of culture: happiness, sadness, fear, anger, surprise, disgust, and contempt. Each has distinct facial cues. Let's break down a few of the most important ones to watch for. Contempt is one of the most telling and dangerous emotions you can spot. It shows up as a slight raising of one corner of the mouth, almost like a crooked half-smile. It might look subtle, but it often signals disdain, disrespect, or a feeling of superiority. If you see someone flash contempt during a conversation, even if they're saying all the right things, you can be sure they're not fully with you emotionally. This is especially important to notice in personal relationships and negotiations. Disgust shows as a wrinkling of the nose, raised upper lip, sometimes a slight pulling back of the head. You might see this when you offer an idea someone doesn't like, even if they say, "That sounds fine." Anger often appears in tightened lips, flared nostrils, furrowed brows, even if someone is trying hard to stay calm. You'll sometimes see this in high-pressure situations where someone wants to maintain composure but is seething inside. Fear is another big one, usually seen in widened eyes, raised eyebrows, lips slightly pulled back. Fear can signal discomfort, doubt, or even deception. It takes practice to catch these expressions because they're fleeting. But once you start watching for them, your brain will begin to pick them up more easily. A good way to practice is to watch television, interviews, or debates anywhere. Emotions are running high, but people are trying to maintain a controlled appearance. Pause and rewind when you think you see something, a flash of anger, contempt, or fear, and watch it a few times. Over time, you'll train your eye to catch these signals in real life. But being able to spot a microexpression is only part of the skill. The other part is knowing how to respond. You see, most people, when they catch even a glimpse of a hidden emotion, make the mistake of calling it out immediately. Someone might say, "You're angry, aren't you?" Or, "Why are you upset?" And that almost always makes the other person defensive. Instead, the key is to note what you've seen and use it as quiet information. If you notice disgust or contempt, you can subtly pivot the conversation, asking a more open-ended question about their concerns. If you see fear or hesitation, You might slow down and reassure them. The point is not to confront them, but to adjust your own approach to address what they're really feeling. Micro-expressions can also protect you from being deceived or manipulated. People who lie often forget that their true emotions slip out for just a moment before they regain control of their face and voice. If you're interviewing someone, negotiating, or even dealing with someone you don't fully trust, these little flashes can give you a crucial edge. I remember once meeting a potential business partner who, on the surface, said all the right things. He agreed to every term we proposed, smiled at every suggestion. But every time money came up, I noticed the same fleeting micro-expression, a tightening of the jaw, a flash of contempt. It didn't sit right. I trusted my instincts, did more digging, and discovered he had a history of undercutting partners. Without the ability to see what was really there, I might have walked into a bad deal. So here's what I recommend as you begin to practice decoding micro-expressions. Start small. Spend a few days just observing. Don't worry about responding yet. Just train your eyes to catch the flashes of emotion that don't match what someone is saying. Write down what you notice. Over time, you'll start seeing patterns, and your confidence will grow. And always remember, emotions are hardwired. People can lie with their words. They can fake a smile. They can even control their tone, but for just a split second, the truth almost always shows on their face. If you want to understand people instantly, not just what they want you to see, but what they really feel deep down, learn to decode their micro-expressions. It's like having a secret window into their mind. And once you can see people as they really are, you can connect with them, influence them, and protect yourself better than you ever imagined. Lesson 5. Notice the words they repeat. You've now learned to read the signals people send with their bodies, their energy, their openness, even the fleeting micro-expressions they try to suppress. But now we move into a domain where people reveal just as much, often more, about what they're feeling and thinking. And the remarkable thing is, they do it with their own words. Most people assume that words are the least reliable way to understand someone. After all, people lie, they embellish, they hide behind polite phrases. And it's true, we often use words to obscure what's really going on. But there's a catch. When someone is talking, they can only control so much of what they say. Beneath the carefully chosen phrases and the polished language, you'll often find small cracks where the truth leaks through. And one of the clearest cracks, one of the most reliable tells, is in the words and ideas people repeat. Because repetition, whether they realize it or not, always signals something deeper. I first discovered the power of this lesson years ago during a coaching session with a client. She came in saying she needed help with work-life balance. That's what she called it. She smiled. She sat perfectly upright. She spoke calmly. But then she started talking, and I noticed something strange. Over the course of an hour, she said the word trapped 4 different times. She didn't seem to notice. She said things like, "Sometimes I feel trapped in meetings all day," and "It's like I'm trapped in a schedule I didn't choose." And later, "I don't want to feel trapped in my own home on weekends." The more she said it, the more obvious it became that this wasn't really about time management. She wasn't just busy, she felt powerless, stuck, and unheard. That word kept leaking out of her subconscious. When I finally said, "It sounds like what's really bothering you is feeling trapped," she paused, visibly shaken, and whispered, "That's exactly it." That moment changed everything. The truth is, we all do this. When something is weighing heavily on our mind, a fear, a longing, an insecurity, it shapes how we talk, even when we're trying to hide it. We repeat certain words, certain phrases, because they reflect what we can't quite say outright. And if you're paying attention, Those repetitions are like signposts pointing straight to someone's inner world. Let me give you another example from a completely different kind of conversation. I was negotiating a contract once with a man who seemed agreeable enough. He smiled, he nodded, he agreed to almost every term, but then he kept saying something that caught my attention. Every time money came up, he said, "We have to make sure everyone feels secure." Not once, not twice, but at least 7 times over the course of the meeting. It became clear to me that he didn't actually trust us yet. He was afraid we'd take advantage of him, or that something wasn't being disclosed. He couldn't say it outright, but he kept dropping the word secure, as if reminding himself and us of what he needed most. By addressing that concern directly, by showing him we could build a deal that felt secure for everyone, we saved the relationship. Without noticing that one repeated word, I might have completely misread him. So how do you develop this skill for yourself? First, you have to slow down and truly listen. This is harder than it sounds, because most people spend conversations thinking about what they're going to say next, instead of really absorbing what's being said. When you're trying to understand someone, don't just listen for the surface meaning, listen for patterns. Pay attention to the exact words someone uses, especially when describing how they feel, or what they want, or what's wrong. If you hear a word or phrase more than once, flag it in your mind. Sometimes the repetition is obvious. Someone might keep saying they feel overwhelmed, or unseen, or frustrated. Those are usually clues to their core emotional state. Other times the repetition is more subtle, like mentioning security, or respect, or time several times in different contexts. Those tell you what they value most, what's really driving their behavior. And sometimes people repeat entire stories or metaphors, revealing what's at the heart of their struggle. I once had a friend who, whenever he talked about dating, would joke about being on the bench. At first it seemed like just a light-hearted sports metaphor, but he kept saying it. "I feel like I'm on the bench. I'm tired of being on the bench." Finally I realized he didn't just feel unlucky, he felt unworthy, excluded from the game of life. That metaphor became the key to helping him open up about his self-esteem. Once you've identified what someone keeps repeating, the next step is to gently explore it with them. Don't pounce on it. You don't need to say, "You've said that word 4 times. Instead, reflect it back and invite them to say more. For example, "You've used the word trapped a few times. Can you tell me more about what that feels like for you?" Or, "You've mentioned wanting to feel secure. What would that look like to you?" Or even, "You've said you feel overwhelmed a lot lately. What's contributing to that the most?" When you do this, you'll often see people stop and realize something they hadn't admitted even to themselves. You're not just listening to their words anymore, you're listening to the truth behind the words. There's another reason this skill is so powerful. When people realize you've heard what matters most to them, when they feel like you've understood what's really on their mind, it creates trust on a level that can't be faked. It makes them feel truly seen. In fact, this is one of the fastest ways to win people over. Show them you're the kind of person who hears what they're really saying, not just what they say on the surface. But here's a word of caution. Be kind with this knowledge. Don't use it to manipulate people or to shame them for what they reveal unconsciously. This skill should always be about connection and understanding, not control. So starting today, I want you to try this. The next time you're in a conversation, listen as if you're listening for treasure. Tune your ear to notice not just the words, but the words that come up again and again. Write them down if you need to. Then, when the time feels right, ask about them. Invite the other person to explore them with you. You'll find that people tell you more than they intended, and sometimes more than they even realize just by the way they talk. We all reveal ourselves in our words. We can't help it. And the people who understand us best are not necessarily the smartest or the most persuasive, but the ones who are paying close enough attention to hear what's really being said. So pay attention to the words that keep surfacing. In them, you'll find the clues to what really matters to the people around you, and you'll understand them in a way they'll never forget. Lesson 6. Watch how they treat others. By now, you've learned to pay attention to the little things people often try to hide: their body language, the energy they project, the words they choose, the fleeting expressions they can't suppress. Each of those skills gives you a sharper picture of who someone really is. But there's another layer one that reveals not just what they're feeling in the moment, but what kind of person they really are at their core. This lesson isn't about reading tiny signals. It's about observing something much bigger, much more profound, and often much more telling. It's about watching how people treat others. If you want to truly understand someone, don't just watch how they treat you when they want something from you. Watch how they behave toward the people who can offer them nothing in return. This is one of the oldest and most reliable truths of human behavior. Anyone can be polite when they're trying to impress you. Anyone can be kind when they know you're watching, when there's something to gain: a job, a sale, your approval. But their real character is revealed in how they treat people they think don't matter. I learned this early in my career, during a business dinner at an upscale restaurant. I was meeting a potential mentor, someone I admired enormously for his success. He had a reputation for brilliance and charm, and that night he was exactly that: charming, warm, full of stories and compliments. But then the waiter made a small mistake, bringing the wrong wine to the table. And in that instant, this man transformed. He snapped at the waiter, ridiculing him loudly in front of everyone, his voice dripping with contempt. The waiter, clearly embarrassed, apologized and hurried away. I remember sitting there, stunned. All evening, he had made me feel like I mattered, and in a moment I realized it wasn't kindness that drove him, but calculation. He was kind to me because I could do something for him. To the waiter, who could do nothing, he showed his true self. That moment taught me more about human nature than anything else I'd learned up to that point. And it's not just about rudeness to waiters. This pattern shows up everywhere. In meetings, watch how people speak to junior staff. Are they respectful? Do they listen? Or do they cut them off and dismiss their ideas? At home, watch how someone treats family members when they're tired or stressed. Do they take their frustrations out on those closest to them? In public, watch how someone behaves when no one seems to be paying attention. Do they hold the door open for a stranger or let it slam shut? Every interaction tells you something. And the key is, don't just listen to their words, listen to their patterns. One rude comment might just be a bad day. But if you notice someone consistently treating less important people poorly, you can safely assume that's their default. This is especially crucial in relationships. When you're dating, it's easy to be swept away by how kind someone is to you. But how do they talk about their ex? Do they describe them with respect or bitterness and blame? How do they talk about their parents, their co-workers, the people who serve them? That's who they'll eventually become with you, too, because none of us can pretend forever. Psychologists have even studied this phenomenon. They call it fundamental attribution error. We tend to assume someone's behavior toward us reflects their true self, when really it might just reflect the fact that they want something. Their behavior toward others, particularly those who can't give them anything, is far more honest. I remember another story that illustrates this perfectly. A friend of mine once worked in a retail store where the CEO of the company came in unannounced one afternoon. Everyone was nervous. They knew their jobs might depend on making a good impression. But the CEO did something unusual. Instead of going straight to the managers, he quietly walked around the store, watching how employees interacted with each other, how they treated customers, even how they spoke to the janitorial staff. At the end of his visit, he said, "How you treat the people you don't think matter tells me everything I need to know about you. That's stuck with me ever since." So what can you do with this knowledge? First, cultivate the habit of observing interactions that don't involve you. Next time you're in a restaurant, watch how the people at the next table talk to the server. When you're in a meeting, watch how your colleagues treat the most junior person in the room. When someone is on the phone, listen to how their tone changes, depending on who they're talking to. Second, listen to the stories they tell about others. If someone is constantly putting down their friends, mocking strangers, or complaining about everyone around them, those aren't just stories, they're reflections of how they see the world. And third, hold yourself to the same standard. People will judge your character based on how you treat others, too, especially those who can't pay you back. Every kind word, every small gesture of respect leaves an impression. When you start looking at people this way, you'll begin to see the world differently. You'll stop being fooled by shallow charm, and you'll stop being surprised when someone's true colors finally come out, because you'll have seen them from the start. People show you who they are in how they treat those who can't help them. Believe them. So if you want to understand someone instantly, not just what they feel in the moment, but who they really are, don't just listen to how they talk to you. Watch how they treat everyone else. That's where the truth lives. Because here's the thing, people don't live in a vacuum when they're interacting with you. You are one person in a web of relationships they've built over time. The way they move through that web, the way they leave a trail of kindness or cruelty, respect or disregard, says more about their character than anything they might say to you directly. We all put on a performance when we want to make a good impression, and it's easy to believe someone when they're charming and attentive, when they make you feel special. But the real measure of a person isn't how they act when the spotlight is on them, it's how they behave when they think no one's watching, when there's nothing at stake, when the people in front of them have nothing to offer in return. This perspective is also a safeguard, a way to protect yourself from being deceived by appearances. How many times have you heard someone say, "They seemed so nice at first. I had no idea they were capable of this"? The signs are almost always there, if you know where to look. If you're hiring someone for your team, for example, don't just watch how they treat you in the interview. Notice how they speak to the receptionist, how they interact with the intern who brings them a coffee. If they're dismissive or rude to someone they see as beneath them, that's a red flag you can't afford to ignore. If you're choosing a business partner, don't just focus on how persuasive and agreeable they are when pitching ideas to you. Pay attention to how they speak about their past colleagues, how they treat their employees when they think no one's paying attention. Do they use power to lift others up or to push them down? And if you're building a relationship, don't get swept up in the way they make you feel in the moment. Watch how they handle frustration with strangers, how they speak about the people who have hurt them, how they behave toward people who are struggling. Are they quick to judge, quick to belittle, or do they offer grace and understanding? When you pay attention in this way, you start to see patterns, and patterns don't lie. One of the most remarkable things about observing how someone treats others is how quickly it clarifies what kind of person you're dealing with. You stop wasting time trying to interpret mixed signals. You stop rationalizing bad behavior or excusing red flags. You simply watch, and you believe what you see. This also frees you from a common trap, thinking you're special. Many people get caught up in the illusion that someone's kindness or attention toward them is unique, that they've somehow earned a better version of this person than everyone else gets. But that's rarely true. If someone gossips about their friends to you, rest assured they gossip about you to others. If someone is quick to insult strangers when they're with you, they'll eventually insult you when you're not around. The way someone treats others is almost always the way they will eventually treat you. There's also a positive side to this. The opposite is equally true. People who consistently treat everyone with respect, even when no one's watching, even when they have nothing to gain, those are people you can trust. Those are the people worth keeping close. I once met a man who ran a large company. He was successful, powerful, admired. But what stood out to me was not how he treated me or how he treated his board of directors. It was how he treated the janitor who walked by while we were talking. He stopped mid-sentence, smiled warmly, addressed him by name, and asked how his family was doing. And the janitor lit up, because he knew he mattered. In that moment, I understood everything I needed to know about that man's leadership, his values, and his character. So if you want to understand people instantly and with remarkable clarity, cultivate the habit of quiet observation. Stop being dazzled by how someone treats you in a controlled, transactional setting. Start watching how they treat the invisible people, the powerless people, the ones they don't need to impress. Watch what they say when they're angry. Watch what they do when they're inconvenienced. Watch how they behave when someone else is vulnerable. That's the truth. That's who they are. And once you learn to see it, you'll never be fooled again. This ability to quietly watch how people treat others is not just about identifying bad behavior, it's also about discovering the quiet goodness that many people carry but rarely announce. You'll begin to notice the ones who instinctively hold the elevator, even when they're in a hurry. The ones who say thank you to every person who serves them, no matter how small the gesture. The ones who listen attentively to those who have no authority or status. These moments might seem insignificant, but they are profound windows into the soul. And this habit of observation is not just useful in obvious situations like hiring, dating, or forming partnerships. It becomes a way of understanding people more deeply in every area of your life. It teaches you to stop relying solely on what people say, and instead to see what their actions reveal. People tell you who they are every day, in ways they don't even realize. But most of us are too distracted to notice. Start looking at people in the little moments. Notice who picks up after themselves in a shared kitchen and who leaves a mess for others. Notice who acknowledges the bus driver, the grocery clerk, the cleaning crew, and who walks past them as if they're invisible. Notice who shows up for others even when it's inconvenient and who disappears the moment there's nothing in it for them. Patterns matter, and this is key. Don't judge someone based on one interaction. Everyone has bad days, moments of stress or thoughtlessness, but over time, patterns emerge. Do they consistently show kindness, even when they're tired? Do they consistently act entitled, even when no one's watching? Those are the patterns you're looking for, because patterns are more honest than performances. This also helps you avoid one of the most common mistakes we make, falling for charm instead of character. Some of the most charming people in the world are also the most dangerous, because they know how to turn on the charm when it suits them. But charm is a skill, character is a habit. And if you pay close attention to how someone treats others, you'll always see the difference. There's a saying, a person's true character is revealed by how they treat those who can do nothing for them. It's not how they treat their boss, or their clients, or their friends when they're in a good mood. It's how they treat a stranger who needs help, a child who spills a drink, a coworker who makes a mistake, a person who has no power to reward or punish them. That is who they really are. And here's another thing to keep in mind: people are watching you too. Just as you're observing how they treat others, they're noticing how you treat others as well. This is why cultivating kindness, patience, and respect in your own actions is so important. You set the tone for how people experience you, and you attract the kind of people who resonate with the way you show up in the world. When you make it a practice to treat everyone with dignity regardless of what they can do for you, You not only show your own character, but you create a kind of quiet authority. People will trust you more. They'll want to work with you, confide in you, follow your lead, not because you demand it, but because you've earned it. This is also true in leadership. The best leaders I've ever known didn't just command respect from those above them, they inspired it in those below them. They knew the names of everyone in the company, from the receptionist to the maintenance staff. They gave credit where it was due, and they never treated anyone as invisible. And because of that, people were loyal to them in a way you can't buy with money or enforce with power. If you aspire to be a person, others trust a person, others feel safe, opening up to start with this simple habit. Look at how you treat the people you don't have to impress, and hold others to the same standard. This practice also builds a kind of quiet confidence, because when you understand that people's actions toward others reveal the truth, you stop taking things so personally. If someone is kind to you but cruel to others, you stop fooling yourself into thinking you're the exception. If someone is respectful and considerate to everyone, you stop doubting whether their kindness to you is genuine. And perhaps most importantly, this perspective teaches you humility. Because we've all been guilty, at some point, of treating someone poorly because we were rushed, stressed, or self-absorbed. But when you start paying attention to how others behave, you begin to hold yourself to a higher standard. You start asking yourself, what do my actions say about me? How do I show up when no one is watching? How do I treat the people who can't help me? That self-awareness is powerful. It makes you someone who not only sees the truth in others but lives it yourself. So, to summarize, if you want to understand people instantly, not just what they feel in the moment, but who they truly are, stop focusing solely on what they say to you and start watching what they do with everyone else. Watch how they treat the people they don't think matter. Watch how they act when they have nothing to gain. Watch how they behave when they think no one's paying attention. That's where you'll find the truth. And once you learn to see people this way, you'll never again mistake charm for character or words for intentions. You'll see people clearly, and you'll know who's worth your time, your trust, and your heart. Lesson 7. Spot the fake smile. By now you've learned how to read people in ways most others never even consider, by observing the patterns in their words, the subtleties of their energy, the way they treat the people around them when they think no one's paying attention. These skills already put you ahead of the curve. But in this next lesson, we're going to focus on something even more subtle, a single expression people use every day to hide what they really feel: the smile. Smiling is one of the most universal human behaviors. Even infants smile. Even across cultures, a smile is almost always understood as a sign of happiness, warmth, friendliness. It's one of the first things we notice about someone, and it shapes how we feel about them almost instantly. But here's the problem: smiles are easy to fake. Most people assume that a smile means someone is happy, engaged, friendly. We're taught to just smile, even when we're nervous, uncomfortable, or even angry. Entire industries, from retail to hospitality, train people to smile no matter what they feel inside. And because of that, the smile has become one of the most common masks people wear to hide what they really feel from the outside world. So if you really want to understand someone, to see past the mask, you have to learn to tell the difference between a real smile and a fake one. The real name for a genuine smile is a Duchenne smile, named after the French neurologist who studied facial expressions in the 19th century. A Duchenne smile is produced not just by the muscles around the mouth, but also by the muscles around the eyes. When someone genuinely feels joy, both sets of muscles engage, the corners of their mouth lift, and the skin around their eyes crinkles into crow's feet. The eyes slightly narrow and take on a soft, warm look. But a fake smile, the kind we put on to be polite, to hide discomfort, or to deceive usually engages only the mouth. The lips stretch into a smile, but the eyes stay flat. There's no warmth, no crinkling at the corners, no softness in the gaze. The next time someone smiles at you, don't just look at their mouth, look at their eyes. If the smile doesn't reach them, take it as a sign that what you're seeing on the outside doesn't match what they're feeling inside. I once worked with a man who was the very picture of charm. He smiled constantly at clients, at colleagues, even at strangers in the elevator. Everyone assumed he was warm and friendly. But if you watched closely, you'd notice that his eyes never matched his mouth. He'd give you this perfect, toothy grin, but his gaze stayed cold, calculating. And sure enough, over time people realized he wasn't trustworthy. He used that smile as a shield, a way to disarm people while he worked behind the scenes to serve only himself. That experience taught me something important. Smiles can be incredibly deceptive. But this skill isn't just about spotting liars or manipulators. It's also about compassion. Sometimes people fake a smile because they're hurting and don't want to burden others. Sometimes they fake a smile because they feel pressure to seem okay, even when they're not. When you learn to see past the surface, you're able to meet people where they really are, and that kind of understanding can mean the world to someone who feels unseen. This is especially important in personal relationships. How many times have you asked someone you care about if they're okay, and they just smiled and said, "I'm fine," when you could tell they weren't? A flat, joyless smile can tell you they're holding something back, even if they don't yet feel ready to say it out loud. I remember a friend of mine going through a divorce. Every time we got together, she'd flash this big smile and insist everything was fine. But the more I watched, the more I noticed the sadness in her eyes, the way her gaze dropped, even as her lips stayed upturned. One day I finally said gently, "You don't have to be okay just for me." And she broke down crying, relieved that someone had finally seen past her mask. This is the gift of learning to spot a fake smile. It lets you respond to the person, not just the performance. So, how can you practice? Start by training your eyes to focus on the whole face, not just the mouth. When someone smiles, glance at the corners of their eyes. Do they crinkle naturally? Do their cheeks lift, narrowing the eyes slightly? Does their gaze soften? That's a genuine smile. If the eyes stay wide and flat, if the smile seems pasted on and stiff, chances are it's not real. Pay attention to the timing as well. Real smiles tend to come on slowly and fade naturally. Fake smiles are often sudden, forced, and drop away abruptly once the social moment has passed. Also, notice the context. Is the smile appropriate to the situation? Sometimes people smile at inappropriate times, like when they're nervous, embarrassed, or even angry, because they're trying to hide their true emotions. And perhaps most importantly, trust your instincts. Humans are surprisingly good at detecting insincerity, even if we don't know exactly why we feel it. If you sense that something about a person's smile feels off, you're probably right. But always use this skill with kindness. Don't confront people about their fake smiles or call them out. Just note it as a piece of information, a clue that they may not be as okay, as happy, or as honest as they appear. Use it to adjust your response, to offer support if needed, or simply to guard yourself if you sense someone isn't being authentic. When you really pay attention to the difference between genuine and fake smiles, you'll start to see the world differently. You'll see the hidden sadness behind someone's cheerful facade. You'll catch the contempt lurking beneath someone's polite grin. You'll notice the guardedness in someone who claims to be open. And perhaps most importantly, you'll learn to give people what they actually need, not just what they pretend to want. So from now on, whenever someone smiles at you, take a moment to look beyond the surface. Look at their eyes. Look at the subtle timing. Look at whether the warmth you see in their mouth matches the emotion you feel in the room. A smile is not always a sign of happiness, but it's always a clue to something. And the more you train yourself to notice what lies beneath the smile, the more you'll come to understand just how much emotion people try to hide behind it. Because a fake smile is rarely meaningless. It usually conceals something: discomfort, sadness, fear, resentment, insecurity, and it's up to you to decide how to respond when you see it. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do when you spot a fake smile is simply to let the person keep their mask on. Not everyone is ready to be vulnerable. Not everyone wants to explain what they're really feeling in that moment. And that's okay. But knowing what you know, you can choose to soften your approach, ask more thoughtful questions, give them space to open up if they want to, and leave the door open for when they are ready to show you their authentic self. Other times, spotting a fake smile can protect you. When someone is pretending to be pleased or supportive, but their smile doesn't reach their eyes, it's often a signal that their words don't match their intentions. They may agree to something publicly, but work against you privately. They may feign interest in you, but harbor resentment underneath. Catching that inconsistency early can help you adjust your expectations and protect your boundaries before it's too late. It's also worth noting that smiles can carry layers of meaning. Some fake smiles aren't hiding negative feelings at all. Sometimes they're simply covering up anxiety or shyness. In a social setting, someone might smile just to avoid standing out or to keep from being questioned. A fake smile can also be a peace offering, a way of saying, "I'm not entirely comfortable here, but I'm trying to keep this pleasant." And that's why your job is never to judge the person for smiling falsely, only to recognize what it reveals. I once worked with someone who always greeted everyone with a big, bright smile every morning, no matter what. People assumed she was the happiest person in the office. But I noticed something strange. Her eyes always looked tired, her gaze often drifted, and the smile faded the moment she thought no one was looking. Over time, I began to check in on her more, asking gentle, open-ended questions. Eventually, she confided that she'd been struggling for months with burnout and family problems at home. Nobody else had seen it because nobody else looked past the smile. That experience taught me that sometimes the strongest people, the ones who appear the happiest, are the ones who most need someone to notice what's really going on. When you make it your habit to notice the difference between a real smile and a fake one, you begin to see the truth that so many others miss. You become the kind of person who doesn't just respond to appearances, but to reality. You see the people behind their masks. And that ability makes you not just a better judge of character, but a better friend, partner, leader, and human being. So make it a point to observe carefully. The next time someone smiles at you, pause for just half a second and look at their whole face, their eyes, their cheeks, the timing, the way the smile fades or lingers. Does it feel warm and effortless, or stiff and mechanical? Does it light up their whole expression, or does it sit on their lips like a mask? And don't stop there. Watch how their smile changes with different people in different situations. Sometimes someone who fakes a smile with you will show a genuine one when speaking with someone else, and that too tells you something about where you stand with them and who they really are. The truth is, once you've learned to spot a fake smile, you can never unsee it. You'll start noticing it everywhere, in meetings, in shops, on social media, even in the mirror when you catch yourself putting one on for the sake of others. And that's a gift, because it reminds you that everyone, even the people who seem happiest, carries feelings they don't always show. So use this knowledge wisely. Be gentle when you see someone hiding behind a smile. Be cautious when someone uses a fake smile to deceive. And be aware of your own tendency to smile when you don't mean it, because your authenticity matters too. In the end, smiles are powerful. Real ones can light up a room, fake ones can mislead or conceal. But either way, they always tell a story. And if you're paying attention, you'll know how to read it. The most powerful thing about learning to spot a fake smile is not just what it tells you about the other person, it's also what it teaches you about yourself and the way we all relate to each other. When you start noticing how often people use fake smiles, you realize just how pervasive the need to perform is in our daily lives. People are taught from childhood to smile in situations where they don't feel like smiling at teachers, at guests, at customers, at bosses. And over time, it becomes automatic. The smile becomes a shield, a habit, even a way of keeping others at a safe emotional distance. But beneath every fake smile, there's always a real emotion trying to get out. And when you're perceptive enough to see that emotion, you have a choice. You can choose to push past the surface and invite the real person to step forward, or you can choose to simply note what you've seen and adjust your expectations accordingly. In personal relationships, this skill can be a profound gift. Think of the people closest to you, your partner, your child, your sibling, your best friend. There will be times when they say they're fine and smile at you, but you'll feel that something's off. Their smile is tight, their eyes are distant. When you catch that, you can gently ask, "Are you sure? You don't have to smile for me." That single sentence can open the floodgates for someone who's been silently struggling. In professional settings, being able to distinguish between real and fake smiles can protect you from manipulation or misplaced trust. When someone praises your work with a smile that doesn't quite reach their eyes, you can make a mental note. They may not really mean that. You can probe deeper, ask better questions, and avoid being blindsided later by hidden resentment or disagreement. There's also a cultural dimension to this. In some cultures, smiling is expected no matter what. In others, people are more reserved, and a genuine smile is a rare and valuable signal. Being aware of these differences makes you more culturally sensitive and more effective at reading people across different contexts. And let's not forget, the smile you see can also tell you something about timing. When someone gives you a fake smile during a tense moment, it might mean, now is not the time to push further. The fake smile is a way of saying, I'm not ready to talk about this yet. That's your cue to step back, give them space, and try again later. It's also important to notice when someone's fake smile turns into a real one. That shift, that moment when the eyes finally light up, when the cheeks lift, when the warmth spreads across their whole face, is a sign you've broken through their defenses. You've earned their trust. That moment is precious, and it's worth everything. In fact, practicing this skill can even make you more authentic yourself. Once you begin seeing how much of the world runs on false smiles, you may find yourself questioning your own. How often do you smile to cover your true feelings? How often do you smile to avoid a hard conversation, to keep the peace, to hide your vulnerability? When you see yourself more clearly, you can begin to choose authenticity to show up as you really are, and to invite others to do the same. Over time, you'll discover that the most powerful connections you ever build don't come from smiling when you don't mean it. They come from being willing to drop the mask and let someone see the truth in your eyes. So keep watching, keep practicing, keep noticing, because the smile is never just a smile. It is a signal, a story, a shield, a bridge. And those who have learned to read it and respond to what lies beneath it are the ones who truly understand people and who are trusted with their deepest truths. So the next time you see a smile, don't take it at face value. Look closer. Feel the difference. Listen to what it's really telling you. Because sometimes the most important words a person will ever say are written right there in the quiet mismatch between their lips and their eyes. And you, now equipped with this understanding, will know how to hear them. Lesson 8. Silence speaks volumes. If you've followed this journey through the first 7 lessons, you've already developed a remarkable ability to understand others. You've learned to read what they show in their posture, their energy, their words, their fleeting expressions, even the way they treat those around them. You've learned to see through masks, to listen for the patterns, to notice the truths they don't even know they're revealing. But there is still one final and perhaps most powerful layer left to master: the silence. Because here's what most people don't realize. What someone doesn't say can tell you far more than what they do. We live in a world that fills every gap with noise. In conversations, people rush to fill every pause, afraid of awkwardness. In meetings, silence is treated as a mistake. On dates, silence feels like failure. We're conditioned to believe that if someone isn't saying anything, there's nothing to notice. But silence is never empty. Silence is never nothing. When you learn to listen to the silence, to truly pay attention to what happens when words stop, you unlock a level of understanding that few ever reach. I learned this lesson many years ago, sitting across from someone who had just gone through a devastating loss. She sat quietly, staring down at her hands, and every instinct in me screamed to say something, anything, to break the heavy silence. But instead, I waited. And after what felt like an eternity, she finally looked up and whispered the words she'd been holding back, words that changed the entire conversation. That day I realized, some truths only surface in stillness. So what does it mean to listen to the silence? First, it means noticing when silence appears. Does someone go quiet when a certain topic comes up? Does their energy drop when someone's name is mentioned? Do they stop contributing when the group discussion veers in a particular direction? Those moments are not random, they're signals. Silence often means discomfort, fear, disagreement, sadness, or even shame. In negotiations, silence can be a tactic, but it can also be a tell. Someone who suddenly goes quiet after hearing your proposal may be calculating, but they may also be unsure, or even insulted. If you rush to fill that silence with more talking, you'll never know what it really meant. But if you let it sit and simply watch their face, their body, their breathing, you'll often find the answer in how they react to the stillness. In personal relationships, silence often hides vulnerability. Someone may retreat into quiet because they're afraid to express what they really feel. When you see this, resist the urge to demand answers or force words. Sit with them in the silence. Let them know you're there, ready to hear them when they're ready to speak. Often that quiet presence is more comforting than any words you could offer. Silence can also show up in how someone avoids things entirely. Pay attention to the stories they don't tell, the subjects they always steer away from, the people they never mention. These absences often reveal where their deepest pain or conflict lies. But listening to silence is not just about noticing theirs, it's also about mastering your own. People reveal themselves when you give them the space to do so. When you stop filling every pause with chatter, when you stop rushing to prove your point or to soothe your own discomfort. In a world where everyone talks over each other, silence is powerful. It creates tension, but also opportunity. It invites honesty. It compels others to fill the gap, often with the thing they were holding back all along. I once watched a senior negotiator close a deal simply by staying quiet. The other party made an offer, and he just sat there. No reaction, no words. The silence stretched uncomfortably long, and eventually the other party started talking again and sweetened the offer all on their own. That's the power of silence. In conversations, silence also allows emotions to settle and insights to emerge. People often say things they don't mean just to fill the space. But in silence, they reflect. And sometimes they find the courage to speak what's really in their heart. So how can you practice this skill? Start by noticing how uncomfortable you are with silence. Do you rush to fill every pause? Do you blurt out reassurances when someone stops talking? Catch yourself, resist, give the other person space. Next, watch how silence affects others. Who grows uneasy? Who uses it to their advantage? Who retreats into it completely? Every reaction tells you something different. Finally, learn to use silence deliberately. In a tense moment, instead of arguing back, let your quiet presence say what words cannot. In a moment of connection, let the silence deepen the bond between you. And in a moment of truth, let the silence invite it to surface. The most important thing to remember is this: silence does not mean nothing is happening. It means something deeper is happening, something words can't quite touch yet. And those who have learned to listen to silence can hear things others never will. You'll hear the fear that hides behind a smile. You'll feel the hesitation in someone's pause. You'll sense the truth beneath their polite, "Everything's fine." And you'll learn that sometimes the best way to understand someone is simply to stop talking and let them fill the quiet with what they've been waiting to say. So don't fear the silence. Welcome it. Study it. Use it. Because in the spaces between words, people reveal who they really are. And if you're paying attention, you'll understand them in a way few others ever will. That is the gift of silence. And it belongs to those who are wise enough and patient enough to listen. The more you pay attention to silence, the more you realize it's not a void, it's a container. It holds tension, truth, fear, hope, resentment, longing, resistance, and sometimes love. Silence holds the things people aren't ready to name yet. And if you learn to respect that, to hold space for that, you'll become someone people feel safe being real around, even if they never quite find the words. There's a quiet dignity in learning to sit with someone in their silence. Most people rush to fix, advise, explain, or distract. But the person who can simply stay, who can be present without pressure, is rare. And that presence is healing. Think about it. In your own life, how many times have you wished someone would just be with you without asking you to perform, explain, or justify what you were feeling? Someone who could sense that your silence wasn't rejection or confusion, but vulnerability. A silent cry for space or rest or understanding. Now imagine what it means to be that person for someone else. When someone goes quiet in front of you, they're often doing something much braver than talking. They're feeling, they're sorting, remembering, deciding whether they trust you enough to share what's inside. And if you jump in too fast with advice, with jokes, with noise, you interrupt that delicate process. You shut down something sacred before it's ready to open. But if you can stay still, stay soft, and just let the silence breathe, you become the one who helps bring truth into the light. This is especially powerful in moments of conflict. When emotions are running high, silence isn't weakness, it's control. Choosing not to fire back, choosing to pause before reacting, choosing to listen fully before responding. That kind of silence can diffuse tension faster than any clever argument. It shifts the tone. It invites the other person to reflect rather than defend. It shows strength without aggression. In moments of uncertainty, silence also creates space for depth. People often speak in reflexes, saying what they think they're supposed to say. But when you give them a few extra seconds, something real emerges. They go beyond the surface, beyond the automatic answer, and reach for something more honest. That's where the real understanding happens. Even in group settings, meetings, brainstorms, family conversations, silence can be transformational. The most thoughtful ideas often come from the quieter people in the room, the ones who need a little space to gather their thoughts. If you dominate the conversation, they'll never speak. But if you allow silence to stretch even awkwardly, You give them the room to step in, and when they do, what they share is usually more grounded, more sincere, more original. There's also the kind of silence that comes after someone speaks when they've just said something hard, vulnerable, or revealing. Many people panic in that moment. They jump in to reassure or smooth over the discomfort. But if you stay still, if you let the moment hang, what you're really doing is honoring it. You're showing them, I'm not afraid of your truth. I'm here for all of it. That kind of silence builds unshakable trust. And then there's another kind of silence, the shared silence between two people who don't need to say anything to feel connected. Think of the old friends who sit together without speaking, the lovers who walk without words, the parent who holds a child close without asking questions. That kind of silence is not empty, it's full of presence, safety, and knowing. You can't manufacture that kind of silence. It's something that grows between people who've learned to feel each other, not just hear each other. But here's something crucial to understand. Silence is not always peaceful. Sometimes it's withholding. Sometimes it's control. Sometimes it's punishment. Silence can be a form of communication, and sometimes a weapon. The key is to learn to read the difference. A silence that's heavy with unresolved pain feels very different than one that's light with mutual understanding. A silence that excludes feels different than one that holds space. That emotional tone, the texture of the silence, is just as important as the words someone doesn't say. When you become someone who can recognize those shades, those moods within the quiet, you become emotionally fluent at a higher level than most people ever reach. Because true emotional intelligence isn't just knowing what to say, it's knowing when not to. It's knowing when to let someone take the lead. It's knowing when to wait. It's knowing when someone needs silence to process and when they need it to protect themselves. It's about sensing what the other person isn't ready to give and respecting them anyway. So as you move forward, I encourage you to treat silence as a language. It's not something to be solved. It's not a problem to fix. It's a presence to listen to. Let it speak. Let it teach you. Let it show you the truth that words often can't. Because when all the smiles have faded and all the stories have been told and all the signals have been read, it's the silence that remains. And in that silence, if you're patient enough, if you're quiet enough, people will reveal everything. And that's when you'll truly understand them. Not just what they say, not just what they show, but who they are beneath all of it. That is the final key. That is the last layer. That is the deepest insight of all. Silence doesn't just speak, it reveals. And when you've learned how to listen to it, you'll never be in the dark again. Conclusion: the art of understanding people instantly. You've come a long way. Through these 8 lessons, you've learned skills that few people ever take the time to master. You've learned how to watch the quiet signals in someone's body, to sense their energy and match it, to listen to what they say and what they say without knowing, and to see through the masks they wear every day. You've learned to notice the people they overlook, the words they repeat, the cracks in their smile, the pauses in their speech, and even the stories hiding in their silence. You've learned that people reveal themselves constantly, in big ways, in small ways, and in ways so subtle most of the world misses them completely. But you won't miss them anymore, because now you know what to look for. And more than that, you know how to respond. That is the difference between someone who merely observes others and someone who truly understands them. Because understanding people isn't just about gathering information or decoding behaviors. It's about what you do with that knowledge. Do you use it to connect, to offer support, to protect yourself, to help others feel seen in ways they've never felt before? The choice is yours. And as you move forward, here's what I hope you remember most. People are more than what they show you on the surface, always. They are more than the words they speak, more than the smiles they offer, more than the act they perform when they know you're watching. They are a complex mix of fear and hope, pride and doubt, strength and vulnerability, just like you. The world moves too fast. Most of us rush past each other, taking people at face value, never seeing what's really there. But you are different now. You know that the truth lives in the quiet signals, in the patterns, in the moments others overlook. You know that sometimes it shows up in how someone treats the person who brings their coffee, or in the word they say 5 times without noticing, or in the way their eyes don't quite match their smile. You know it hides in the silence, waiting to be heard by someone who's willing to listen. So, be that person. Be the one who listens. Be the one who notices. Be the one who understands. Not just so you can protect yourself, though you will. Not just so you can influence others, though you can. But so you can meet people where they really are. So you can see them fully and help them feel seen. Because at the end of the day, that's what everyone wants. To be understood. And now you hold that gift in your hands. So go into the world and use it. Watch their feet, mirror their energy, ask open-ended questions, decode their microexpressions, notice the words they repeat, see how they treat others, spot the fake smiles. And above all, listen to the silence. People are telling you who they are all the time. Now you know how to hear them. Best of luck.